All right, how's it going, everybody? This is Real World Scrum with Team Foundation Server 2013, and this is the Sprint Planning module. So every sprint starts with a sprint planning meeting, and our goal here is to establish what you're going to do in this sprint. So your flow is typically review the product backlog, look at top priority PBIs, review the capacity for the sprint, pick the PBIs that you're forecasting to get done, create your list of tasks for each PBI. Now, when you go and do that with Team Foundation Server, it looks kind of like this. You're going to enter the sprint start and end dates, you're going to populate the team's capacity, and you're going to use the product backlog manager to choose PBIs that you're going to do in the sprint. Then you're going to use the sprint planner to create tasks. And optionally, you don't have to do this, you can choose to assign tasks to team members as part of this process. So what you're doing here is you're still following what you would do if you were doing Scrum without Team Foundation Server, but now you're going to be able to use TFS to help streamline the process. Which comes to the question of how long should a sprint actually be? Well, Scrum Guide from scrum.org says 30 days or less. So maximum of 30 days if you want to be Scrum Guide compliant. But ultimately it's up to the Scrum team itself to decide how long they want to have their sprints be. Now, less than 30 days gives us 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. And, well, it's really up to the team to figure that out. But whatever you choose to use as your duration, you need to choose it and then stick with it, because you don't want to switch these up. Now, changing your sprint duration is definitely an anti-pattern. It's a worse practice. It's going to ruin your metrics, and it's going to generally prevent your team from getting into a regular rhythm of delivery. Just sort of getting a feel for how they work with each other inside of the certain size of the sprint. And then it definitely gives you, as a team, an unpredictable delivery cadence. And what you want to be able to do is to train your stakeholders to know that you're going to release software on a regular basis. And that regular basis is known as a predictable cadence. So here's the advice. You're going to want to keep your stakeholders satisfied, content, and unafraid. Now, you're probably thinking, that sounds kind of weird to say unafraid in a software development class. It's not, because software is a human endeavor. And here comes my rant. So, where software is that human endeavor, humans have a major fear of loss, and they tend to freak out when their needs and desires are not being met, heard, and respected. Sounds familiar, right? This is probably not, groundbreaking stuff for you. And really at the core of that, at least in software development, is it's all about trust. Do your stakeholders trust you and the team to deliver on time, on budget, what they need, yada, yada, yada. They need to trust you. They need to know that what they're asking you to do and what they'd like to have happen is actually plausibly happening. So the predictable delivery cadence, and then that sprint review meeting at the end of the sprint where you show off done working software, that really helps to build and keep that trust. Now, in that sprint review, when you show done working software, that's really good proof that you're actually managing to achieve something. So that's transparency. They know where you're at. And additionally, you know where you're at. So let's flip it around. Let's say you have no trust. Well, if there's not a lot of trust between you and your stakeholders or your product owner and the team or whatever, if the team to everybody else or team to somebody else does not have a lot of trust in that relationship, you should expect to be hassled, because they're going to be afraid that you're not going to give them what they need. And if you've got crabby stakeholders who are complaining that you don't know what you're doing, well, nothing's going to bring out Microsoft Project and Gantt charts and basically wake up the Waterfall dragon faster than complaining stakeholders. Now, there's something magical, here's a pro tip. If you'd like to sync your company's adoption of Scrum, just say very often that the team doesn't know what they're doing. And that'll bring back Waterfall really fast. Now, obviously, I don't want you to do that. But if you don't have trust and your stakeholders don't believe in you, you're just going to see Waterfall come right back in and rear its ugly, nasty head. And you don't want that. So make sure that you have a predictable cadence so that you can train your stakeholders to know that you're going to be delivering software on a very regular basis. They know it's coming. They know when it's coming. It's not a surprise. And that's the end of my rant. So, bottom line, pick a sprint length and stick with it. Now, how do you choose that sprint length? Well, there's two things that I think about when I'm recommending this or I'm coaching teams on how to adopt Scrum. So, those two things are, Number one, what's your risk tolerance? And number two, how long can you wait to change your mind? So in that risk thing, here's the calculation. As an organization, how long can you let the team go off and do their thing and work on their software without really knowing how they're doing? Because you don't really know until you have done working software. And remember, it's all about that done working software. So until you have it, there's always that risk that something could go wrong and you won't get it. Once again, this is coming back to fear. So you're afraid you won't get your software. That's your risk. And well, there you go. Depends on how long you can wait to know whether or not your team is doing well or not doing well, and if they're going to deliver you done working software. Now on the second one, how long can you wait to change your mind? What we're really talking about here is how long can the product owner go without changing his or her mind? Because the product owner owns the backlog and owns the priority that the team is going to execute on. And when you start your sprint, you're going to choose the PBIs, or the software features, that you're going to do, and they should not change from the beginning of the sprint to the end of the sprint, ideally. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but in general, you want to provide a clear goal of what you'd like your team to do. So that means the product backlog items that you're going to do in the sprint are not changing. You're going to give them a clear goal of what you want, and then you're going to give them time to do their work. So give them the goal and get out of the way. Now, while that sprint is running, the world continues to move. People change their mind, priorities shift, business realities happen. So your top priority that you have today might not necessarily be the same top priority that you have tomorrow. And that's important to remember. That gets to how long can you wait before you can change your mind. So if you're continually telling a team, drop everything you're doing and go work on something else, then you're pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get nothing, or your team's going to really underperform. Because, well, if you're shifting what they're doing all the time, they never get a chance to get in the groove. They can never really start to deliver efficiently. Now, on the flip side, if you're locked in for too long, you don't change your mind, or let's say you're doing 4-week sprints, 4 weeks might be an eternity in your business environment. And you might very well miss some business opportunity because the team is locked in doing their work. So you can't change your mind, you can't identify and start working on a new business opportunity because the team is locked in for far too long. That could be a potential problem. So when I'm trying to figure this out, here's my way that I would think about my sprint length. So in the bottom left-hand corner, if I've got a low tolerance for risk and fast-changing business goals, I'm probably going to go with 1-week sprints. Now, if I've got a low tolerance for risk, but I have well-known constant business goals, or a high tolerance for risk and my business goals change, maybe I'm looking at 2 weeks or 3 weeks. If I have a high tolerance for risk and well-known constant business goals, then 3 weeks or 4 weeks for your sprint length is probably fine. Personally, I also consider a couple other things. So time to get in the groove, time for the team to actually get into flow and really start being productive and really starting to get stuff going. And then maximizing the time in the groove. So maximizing the time that they actually are highly productive. And then the one that's probably the weirdest is that I think a lot about how many nights of sleep people get per sprint. Business oftentimes does not like to admit that we think about things when we're not sitting at our desk, but we do. And how many times have you woken up in the morning after a good night's sleep and you realize that you've got the solution to this problem that has been bugging you for a couple of days? That's because your brain was churning on it while you were sleeping. That is valuable. And if you've only got 4 nights of sleep inside of your sprint, you might be missing out. If you've got 12 nights of sleep inside that sprint, maybe you're actually going to get more creative solutions out of your people. My personal preference on sprint length is 3 weeks. I think it's a good mix between too long and too short. It's just kind of a happy medium. Whatever sprint duration you end up choosing, you're going to need to go and enter that into Team Foundation Server. And you're going to do it by entering sprint start and end dates.